you had a lot of folks who were willing to go on the floor and publicly vote for Jim Jordan to be second in line to the presidency, but given a chance to vote in a secret ballot, said absolutely not. We're done with this guy. So, okay, just your thoughts on the whole up and down Jim Jordan. Bad news is he came close to being speaker. Good news is, weirdly enough, sanity prevailed in the Republican Party. Just give me your narrative of the Jim Jordan saga.
So let me take two separate things. One is what you said about the secret ballot, because, just to remind everyone, I am a squish. It's my version of sanity with the people in the middle, the moderates, right? And our advantage is we're usually right because we're not crazy. We're not off. We're not ideological. We're not in some extreme. The downside, of course, Charlie, is that we're weak, right? Because is it Yates or the best lack the worst? What is the line?
Are full of passion and intensity, while
the worst,
the
best lack all conviction.
Yeah, right. Well, the worst is full of passion and intensity. Great quote.
People like me, we think we're the best. No, whether we are, set that aside. But the point is, we certainly lack all conviction, right? And so what you figure is that the people, the squishes, the moderates, are going to fold, right? That was the expectation.
Thus the name Squish.
Yes, exactly.
It is descriptive.
Squish is squish, right? Yeah, but on the secret ballot, your point is correct, right? On the secret ballot, these squishes were afraid to cast votes against Jordan when their names were on it, but on the secret ballot, they voted against him. So they squished there. But in that meeting where Jordan meets with the 20 who are holding out against him, he's expecting, and his right-wing supporters are expecting, these moderates to fold to Jordan, because we are the people, we crazies are the ones who insist on getting our way. You moderates will fold. And they didn't. They didn't. Mm-hmm. And Charlie, I don't know if you talked about this last week, but there was that lovely meeting that was described in Punchbowl News, in a tweet by Punchbowl News, where Jordan says, "What do you guys want?" He thinks he's going to cut a deal with them. And they're like, "We don't want anything from you. We just want you to know that you'll never be speaker." Wow.
Yeah.
The squish is
very,
really
very unsquishy, very unsquishy.
Very unsquishy. Good for them.
Yeah. So Jim Jordan finally goes down, but I have to tell you, and again, I think it's important to underline here that nobody really knows what's going to go on. I mean, even the people who are wired in do not know what's going to go on. So you have 9 candidates. They're going to have this. They will have some sort of a forum later today. Is that right? Where they all get like about 30 seconds to explain how they will run the House, whatever. But I mean, the front runner is this guy, Tom Emmer. And look, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on Tom Emmer. He's one of only 2 of the candidates who did not vote against certifying the election, which means that he has incurred the wrath of Mar-a-Lago. So I just don't see how anybody whose name that you and I would recognize can get to 217. Does that mean there's going to be some dark horse that is going to drop in at the last moment who becomes the consensus of exhaustion? It's just like, okay, we are just exhausted. We're so embarrassed. We're humiliated. We can't come up with anybody else, because I can't see Emmer getting this if he needs to get 217. What do you think?
No. So now our colleague Tim Miller has previously listed 4 scenarios coming out of this, and I can't remember the exact names of them, but the one that I favor, the one that I believe will happen, is the Patrick McHenry pro tem gets added powers and sort of, and the reason I believe in that,
that's the kind of one I've been going because I believe in inertia. Sometimes,
right. Right. Inertia is correct. You're correct, Charlie. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is, ask yourself, what is the most cowardly thing that can be done? That is what the House Republicans will do. It's what they've done all along. And the most cowardly thing is they will just keep kicking the can down the road. And you say to yourself, but they can't. They have to elect a speaker or nothing happens. Actually, the McHenry scenario is the one where they can kick the can down the road. Gates and his crazies and Nancy Mace and all the other, they can say to themselves, look, we're not choosing someone for speaker. We're just temporarily giving the pro tem more power to, and so we'll have essentially an acting speaker. I think that's the most plausible scenario. What do you think?
Well, it's not the least, it may be the least bad. I mean, there are, I'm trying to think of other scenarios. I mean, there are some, horrible scenarios. I think Jim Jordan would have been a horrible scenario. Any candidate backed by Matt Gaetz, horrible scenario. Somebody chosen by Mar-a-Lago, horrible scenario. Going along with this sort of, quasi-normie Patrick McHenry. Okay. Nobody gets what they want, which may be the best we can hope for. You know what I'm saying? Again,
Yeah.
I understand we keep lowering our standards here.
Right. So Charlie, you were talking about the vote to object to electors, and I believe so. There were about 200 Republicans at the time.
Yeah.
The vote was about 120. About 120 Republicans voted to object, and 80 didn't. Yeah. So the problem is we're working with a very narrow universe of people who already didn't vote to overturn the election.
Yeah.
And then within that, we have the people that Trump vetoes. Yeah. But if you go with the McHenry route, then you can claim as a House Republican, I'm not actually voting for McHenry. I'm just voting to temporarily give the guy who's in there now a little bit more authority.
No, I think that's the likeliest scenario, because other than that, you have to have the heavy lifting of getting to 217 votes for somebody else. And look, Will, we've seen, you and I have been around for a while. We've seen divided political parties before. I have to tell you that I don't remember a time when there was a political party where they hated each other with such intensity. I mean, we're not talking about guys who are going to disagree on policy and then go and have a beer. We are talking about people who loathe one another at a visceral level, who would kick each other's dogs. I mean, this is, by the way, I wish I had it in front of me. That letter from Tom McClintock, Republican from California, who wrote a thing of beauty. He wrote this satirical letter to Matt Gaetz, oh, you brave patriots. And people should just look it up. Just do yourself a favor. Go on social media, look up Tom McClintock letter to Matt Gaetz and the others. It is a class. But anyway, these people are having a hard time. I mean, they're at the point where it's hard for them to be in the room with each other. I mean, so there are political divisions, and then there are real I mean, this is a party that's not just in chaos. This is a party that is tearing each other apart. So sad.
But they don't just hate each other.
Only
Charlie.
They had been warned. I'm sorry.
So it's not just that they hate each other, although that's true. It's that they don't have anything to unite around.
Right.
They don't have an agenda. This is a party without a current platform.
The Orange God King.
And that's exactly right. So some years ago, actually it was 2016 when Trump was running for president, and I wrote a piece in Slate that said the Republican Party is a failed state and Donald Trump is its warlord. And that's where we were. And then he became president. And now that he's not president anymore, that's where we are. They don't have anything other than this guy, right? It's not. And so because they transformed themselves into a cult, and they don't have a platform anymore, they don't really agree on things. In the absence of Trump, they can't pull together. I mean, Charlie, this is not the first party to have internal fratricide. No. Absolutely not. The Democrats in the 60s and whatnot. I mean, lots of infighting, but you have to believe in something. You have to have something that at the end of the day says, folks, let's pull together. Let's choose a speaker because here's what we need to do. And they don't have that.
No, they don't have it, and I don't see any prospect for it. So, I'm out of the prediction business. But at this point, I'm looking at the 9 candidates, and apparently there's been some flippings. This morning somebody dropped out, somebody else who I'd never heard of got in. Doesn't matter. It's all white noise at this point. So at the end of the day, they're going to have many, many ballots going back and forth, and they're not going to be able to come to 207. Who knows? But again. Going back to the Patrick McHenry thing, I mean, for those of us who are not in this conference, the only real significance, well, there's a lot of things that are entertaining about it, but you don't want to shut down the federal government. So, could Patrick McHenry be the human CR, continuing resolution to keep the government open? Will they get a vote on aid to Ukraine and aid to Israel on the floor of the House? I don't expect they're going to get anything else done. Nobody else seems that concerned about all of this. By the way, I have to say, and I know that a lot of our listeners really, hate Mitch McConnell, but doesn't Mitch McConnell kind of come off as this is what a grown-up looks like?
Yes.
I mean, the Senate Republicans have their own clown show, but boy, do they look better than and again, we are so lowering the bar here.
Yes, and so this weekend, Mitch McConnell did a little PR tour. I don't know. if you were doing this as a musical tour, I guess you would call it the "I'm Still Alive" tour. He gets,
which is necessary for him.
I'm going to say something very unkind, so please forgive me, Mitch McConnell and your staff.
Mark the tape. Okay,
Mitch McConnell. So they've scheduled interviews with 2 of the Sunday shows. They have had somebody has made up Mitch McConnell. He looks like he has been made up in a funeral home. It is an atrocious.
I thought he looked natural. It looks so natural.
So these are these open casket interviews of Mitch McConnell, right? And he looks terrible, and he refuses to answer questions about his health. And for anyone who thought that Joe Biden looks like he can't speak, McConnell looks terrible. But Charlie, you're right. What McConnell is actually saying, like what Biden is actually saying, is completely sane and sensible. McConnell was talking about, there is an alignment of enemies against the United States in the world right now. That's what we need to focus on: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. And he's making the case for funding Ukraine. And he's got a political party that's becoming isolationist. And McConnell is just, again, the guy looks like a cadaver, but he's completely coherent in what he is saying. He's talking about, the where the money is actually going. We're replenishing our own stockpiles. We're helping our own industrial base. The Ukrainians are fighting and dying against our enemy, depleting the Russians. The Europeans are actually doing way more than Republican politicians generally are conceding they're doing. It's a good investment. He's making a very sound case. And yeah, I got people responding to me on social media basically saying, I don't agree with Mitch McConnell on anything, but I agree with him on this.
So do you know what movie we're all living through now?
What is it?
You sometimes think, are we living through Apocalypse Now? Are we living through Game of Thrones? Is this House of Cards? Is it Veep? You know what the reality is, Will? We are all living through Weekend at Bernie's.